Cabinet approval will be sought tomorrow for the establishment of a domestic violence register as part of Jennie's Law, named in honour of Jennifer Poole, a young mother of two who was murdered by her ex-partner in her home in Dublin in 2021. Ms Poole's family say they hope the register will not only change lives, but also the culture that exists around domestic violence in Ireland.
Jennie Poole was a much-loved daughter, sister and mother of two young children. At just 24 years old, she was murdered by her former partner, Gavin Murphy, in 2021 after he attacked and stabbed her at her home in Finglas. In 2022, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Jennie Poole did not know that Murphy had a history of abusive behaviour and a prior conviction for assaulting a former partner. Since then, her family have campaigned for the introduction of a domestic violence register to protect women and men in the same situation.
What we're seeing in society is that men who are doing this, they're serial offenders. They constantly do. They move from a new partner to a new partner to a new partner, but the cycle doesn't change. So we're hoping that that cycle will change, because we're going to be in a position that we'll have a register that the next person that they go into a relationship with will be able to find out about them in their past.
Jennie's Law will allow those convicted of domestic violence against a partner or former partner to be publicly named online on a register of judgments, which will be managed by the court service. The trial judge will have discretion to issue a judgment in an appropriate case, which will contain details of conviction and sentence, as well as any other information relevant to the offence that the judge deems appropriate.
What's different about this law is it's providing a mechanism and a provision for the courts to decide after a criminal conviction at first instance, to decide that information in respect of the person who is convicted of the serious offence is put into the public domain.
Any information on convictions published on the register will be presented alongside links to domestic violence services and supports. The Minister for Justice will seek approval for Jennie's Law at tomorrow's Cabinet meeting. Dimitri O'Donnell, RTE News.
Now, as we heard earlier, the Cabinet is tomorrow expected to approve plans for a domestic violence register. The legislation is known as Jennie's Law in honour of Jennifer Poole, who was murdered by her former partner in 2021. Her brother Jason has been campaigning for the register. He joins us now. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure this is a time of very mixed emotions for you. Can you begin by telling us a little bit about your sister?
Yeah, Jennifer was 24 years old. She was the mother of two young children. She worked in the local nursing home in Finglas as a carer. She played camogie, senior camogie with Erin's All GA Club. She gave up her time quite vocally within the community in relation to summer projects, youth clubs. She was just an all-round good person. Someone who, I suppose, nobody didn't know. And when you're walking down the street, I suppose everyone would say hello, because that's the type of person she was. A caring, hard-working, independent young girl.
And you're looking for this law because you think if she had had information about her partner, things might have worked out differently for her.
Yeah, Jennifer was in a relationship with Gavin Murphy just for under 12 months. When Gavin and Jennifer got into a relationship, Gavin had told Jennifer that he was living in Spain for 2 years. I suppose as we were going through, pre-trial and getting ready for trial, his convictions became more apparent in court, that he had 13 previous convictions, one for domestic violence of his ex-partner and her mother in 2015, and had done 2 years in prison. So when Jennifer believed that he was in Spain, he was actually in prison. So Jennifer didn't know about his past, didn't know about any of this. And we really, after that pre-trial, kind of sat down as a family and went, there's something not right here. How do you find out about somebody's past? You know, if a journalist is in the courtroom, they can report on it, but if you're not, and it's not being reported, how do you know? So we came to a conclusion that we needed to do something as a family, and that's when our campaign started for Jennie's Law. And Jennie's Law really will be a domestic violence register, where people who have a conviction for domestic violence will appear on this register. And if this register had been in place, we believe as a family that Jennifer would be still alive today.
So she would have been able to look it up and see that the truth about her partner and realise that there was a dangerous situation potentially there. Yeah. Now, it's called domestic violence, but obviously it doesn't just cover what happens in the home. We had our main story this morning was with that appalling knife attack on that poor young woman. So would it cover behaviour behaviour like that?
Yeah, the bill that Minister O'Callaghan is bringing to the Dáil tomorrow to Cabinet for approval will have assault causing harm, all of those other incidents that we do see will be recognised and form part of the bill, which will form part of the domestic violence register known as Jennie's Law.
Now, the victim has to consent to the name being put on the register, as I understand it.
That's correct, because I think what we really, really want to ensure here is that the victim and their supports and their, I suppose, looked after and minded through this process, so that it isn't the blame game, that a judge presiding in the court that day will be the person who decides whether the person was on the register or not, with communication with the victim to ensure that it's the appropriate piece of information to be put out there. And obviously, if you're going on to Courtside's website, and you're putting in the information for the perpetrator, or in this case the person who's been convicted of the crime, you want to know that the full detail is there, and that might include the victim in this case.
Okay. A lot of cases of domestic abuse, they start off, you know, they get worse as time goes on. So you might have barring orders against somebody issued by a court, but that's family law courts, it's in camera, it's not a criminal offence, so that would not be captured by this, I don't think?
Yeah, anything that's family law related in camera can't be a criminal conviction. So what, in this circumstances, what you might appear is maybe somebody who has broken the barring orders, protection orders and safety orders, and it becomes a criminal conviction and there's domestic violence at play. That would be seen then in the eyes of the law as a criminal offence. But if for someone who has a barring order, protection order, they wouldn't appear on the register because it isn't a criminal conviction.
Okay. I suppose there's a wider issue. This obviously would be a very valuable tool for people in certain situations. There is a wider issue of the way society deals with domestic abuse as well, that obviously your family have been vocal about as well. Yeah,
I suppose we need to look at the bigger picture here. You know, where domestic violence register is one mechanism of support that we don't have in place in this country. But there's lots more that we need to do. We need to start calling it out for what it is. When you look at the statistics from the Guards last year, 68,000 people picked up a phone last year and reported domestic violence. That's probably a half of the number who is actually going through that process. This mechanism, this piece of information that is going to be available to them will support them and will support victims into the future and the generation that's coming up behind us. We know far too common what's going on with social media, and there's a mechanism here for support. There's a mechanism here for education, but also for the men and women who are out there to become allies for victims of domestic violence. We need to start calling out for what it is. We need to make sure that we're protecting women and men. And this register is for men and women. It isn't predominantly women who are affected by domestic violence, but a massive amount of work. And if you look at Men's Aid in Ireland, you know, the statistics that they're releasing is very damning as well. So the register is not for women, it's for women and men. And that's something that really needs to be pointed out as well.
OK, Jason Poole, thank you so much for joining us on 6-1.
No problem, thank you.